On July 2, 1943, at Castelvetrano airfield in Sicily, the pilot of a Faller Wolf 190 never noticed the P-40 Warhawk diving from above. Suddenly, machine gun fire ripped through his fuselage. The aircraft spiraled toward the Sicilian countryside below. First Lieutenant Charles B. Hall, a 22-year-old from Brazil, Indiana, had just achieved what German Luftwaffe commanders thought was impossible. A black pilot had shot down one of their elite fighters. The swastika painted on Hall's P-40L Warhawk became the first of 112 enemy aircraft destroyed by men the Germans would later refer to as Schwarze Vogelmenschen, the Black Birdman. In Nazi Germany, racial doctrine viewed black people as subhuman, incapable of mastering complex machinery or showing courage in battle. The Nuremberg laws prohibited marriages between Germans and individuals of African descent. Yet, above the Mediterranean skies, this ideology was about to clash with reality. 992 trained pilots from Tuskegee, Alabama, would systematically dismantle both German aircraft and the German beliefs about racial superiority. What the Luftwaffe pilots did not anticipate as they climbed to intercept American bombers was that they were about to confront some of the most trained and motivated fighter pilots in the entire United States Army Air Forces. These men had overcome barriers their white counterparts never faced. They trained harder and longer than standard pilots. They carried into battle not just a sense of national duty, but also the responsibility of proving their race's capabilities. The math of aerial combat was about to be rewritten in the skies over Europe. 15,000 combat sorties, 1578 missions, and 112 aerial victories resulted in a significantly lower bomber escort loss rate compared to white fighter groups. These statistics forced even the most fervent Nazi ideologues to confront the failure of their racial theories. The path to that first aerial victory did not begin in combat, but in the harsh realities of American segregation. In 1925, the United States Army War College published a report titled Employment of Negro Manpower in War. This report concluded that, compared to white men, black men were of inferior mentality and character. It claimed that black soldiers lacked the necessary traits for effective military service. Military leaders held onto old biases about intelligence for technical roles and courage for combat leadership. However, a small group of black Americans was already proving these misconceptions wrong. Eugene Bullard had flown for France in World War I because the United States would not allow him to serve. Bessie Coleman earned her pilot's license in France in 1921 as no American flight school would accept her. By the 1930s, the Coffee School of Aeronautics in Chicago had trained many black civilian pilots. This showed that flying skill was not limited by race. As tensions grew in Europe, the push for change became stronger. Civil rights leaders like Walter White from the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, Labor leader A. Philip Randolph, and Judge William H. Haight Hasty worked tirelessly for black inclusion in military aviation. Black newspapers such as the Chicago Defender, the Pittsburgh Courier, and the Baltimore Afro-American challenged the Roosevelt administration with a critical question. How could America fight for democracy overseas while denying it at home? On April 3, 1939, Public Law 18 opened the door for change. Senator Harry H. Schwartz added an amendment that required the civilian pilot training program to include one or more schools for training black air pilots as designated by the Civil Aeronautics Authority. While this was a reluctant concession wrapped in segregation, it marked a starting point. When Franklin Roosevelt campaigned for a historic third term in 1940, he needed the support of black voters in important northern cities. On January 16, 1941, Secretary of War Henry L. Stimson announced the formation of the 99th Pursuit Squadron, an all-black flying unit. This announcement carried a warning that reflected the military's low expectations. It would serve as an experiment to determine if black individuals could be trained as combat pilots. Captain Benjamin O. Davis Jr. felt the weight of command as he led 26 pilots of the 99th Fighter Squadron to North Africa in April 1943. He was the son of America's first black general and had faced 4 years of isolation at West Point, where no white cadet spoke to him outside of official duties. Now, he commanded men who carried not only their own hopes, but the dreams of 13 million black Americans. The 99th landed in Farjuna, Tunisia, attached to the 33rd Fighter Group under Colonel William Moyer, a commander known for his doubts about black pilots. Patrol missions over the Mediterranean kept the pilots away from the real action. The commander wanted them to fail. When they didn't excel right away, he had his excuse ready. The morning of the 2nd of June 1943 marked their first combat mission. They attacked the Italian-held island of Pantelleria. As their worn P-40 Warhawks ascended toward their targets, German fighters suddenly showed up. The Tuskegee pilots maintained their formation, keeping their bombers safe. No aircraft were lost on either side, but the Germans learned an important lesson. These pilots could withstand pressure. However, everything changed on the 2nd of July 1943. Charles Hall was on his 8th mission, escorting B-25 Mitchell bombers that were targeting Castelvetrano airfield in Sicily. Two Fowler-Wolf 190s swooped in on the bomber formation. Hall later recalled, "I saw two Fowler-Wolves following the bombers just after the bombs were dropped. I aimed for the gap between the fighters and bombers and managed to turn inside the German planes. I fired a long burst and saw my bullets hit the second aircraft. He was turning left but suddenly dropped and went straight into the ground. When Hall landed, the entire base exploded with excitement. The black ground crews, who had faced months of insults from white personnel, finally had an answer to their critics. Hall's victory marked the first aerial kill by a black American pilot in United States military history. By January 1944, the 99th Fighter Squadron had been in combat for 7 months. Yet Colonel Meare had filed a damaging report, claiming they were not aggressive enough and suggested removing them from combat. This report reached General Henry Hap Arnold, who was ready to end the experiment. Then came Anzio. On the 27th of January 1944, the Luftwaffe launched large raids on Allied forces at the Anzio beachhead. 15 pilots from the 99th flying outdated P-40s faced superior Fowler-Wolf 190s over the battlefield. What happened next silenced the critics for good. The 99th shot down multiple enemy planes. Sources differ, but they recorded between 8 and 13 kills over 2 days. Captain Charles Hall added 2 more victories to his tally, bringing his total to 3. In just 2 days, using inferior aircraft, they destroyed more enemy planes than in their previous 7 months of combat. The War Department conducted a study comparing the 99th to other P-40 squadrons and found they were performing as well as white units. The success at Anzio demonstrated that black pilots could excel in combat when given the chance. In May 1944, the 332nd Fighter Group, which included the 99th, 301st, and 302nd Fighter Squadrons, received orders that would elevate them from being outcasts to becoming legends. They were assigned to the 15th Air Force as bomber escorts. Their missions would take them deep into Nazi Germany, where danger awaited. Colonel Benjamin Davis gathered his pilots at Ramitelli Airfield along Italy's Adriatic coast. He emphasized the importance of protecting the bombers, stating that their mission was not to achieve personal glory. Their task was to ensure the bombers returned safely. This directive shaped their combat approach. They had to stay close to the bombers at all times. In June 1944, General Nathan Twining implemented a marking system for the fighter groups. Each group received unique colors for easy identification. The 332nd was assigned the color red. They painted entire tail sections crimson, not just the nose or bands. The P-51 Mustangs, featuring red tails, red spinners, and red bands, became easily recognizable. When the first bomber crews received escorts with red tails, they did not realize they were being protected by black pilots. They only noticed that these fighters never left their side, avoiding easy kills. News spread among the bomber crews to request the red tails whenever possible. July 18, 1944 tested the red tails like never before. Colonel Davis led 66 Mustangs to meet bombers targeting the Luftwaffe base in Memming, Germany. The bombers were delayed, prompting Davis to make a critical choice. He decided to remain in enemy territory instead of returning to base. When the bombers finally arrived, so did approximately 100 German fighters attacking from several directions. The Germans understood that overwhelming numbers could penetrate the Red Tail's defensive screen. Despite the fierce resistance from the 332nd, who achieved 11 to 12 victories, 15 B-17 bombers were lost to enemy fighters within 20 minutes of intense battle. The 332nd lost 3 pilots, Lieutenants Robert Hutton, Wellington Irving, and Alfred Brown. Critics argued that the high bomber losses indicated black pilots could not handle major engagements. However, operational analysis revealed the reality. The 332nd faced an impossible situation with massive German forces already attacking the bombers. They prevented a complete disaster. By March 1945, the Luftwaffe's conventional fighters struggled to challenge Allied air supremacy. Germany had one final card to play. The Messerschmitt Me-262 was the world's first operational jet fighter. With a top speed of 540 miles per hour, it could outpace any propeller-driven aircraft. On March 24, 1945, the 332nd Fighter Group faced its toughest mission. Their task was to escort bombers on a 1,600-mile round trip to Berlin. The goal was to strike the Daimler-Benz tank factory. Intelligence warned that Me-262s from Jagdgeschwader 7 would be defending the target. Colonel Davis led 43 P-51 Mustangs deep into German territory. As they neared Berlin, the Me-262s emerged, forming the largest jet fighter force ever assembled for a single interception. Lieutenant Roscoe Brown had studied the weaknesses of the German jets. He noted that the enemy's jets were indeed faster. Instead of directly attacking, they maneuvered away and then turned into the jets' blind spots. Brown successfully shot down one Me-262. He reported, "I pulled up at him in a 15-degree climb and fired 3 long bursts from 2,000 feet. Almost immediately, the pilot ejected from about 24,500 feet. Lieutenant Earl Lane achieved what many thought impossible. He shot down a Me-262 with a 2,000-yard deflection shot using the new K-14 computing gun sight. Lieutenant Charles Brantley claimed the third jet victory of the day. The destruction of 3 Me-262s in one engagement was more than most fighter groups would achieve throughout the entire war. The Red Tails surpassed the total of all previous American Me-262 kills in just one afternoon. For this mission, the 332nd Fighter Group earned a Distinguished Unit citation. However, not all encounters between the Tuskegee Airmen and German forces ended in triumph. 32 pilots became prisoners of war, revealing complex interactions between Nazi ideology and military reality. Lieutenant Alexander Jefferson was shot down on August 12, 1944, during his 19th mission. His P-51 was hit over southern France while attacking radar installations. During interrogation, the German officer displayed extensive knowledge about the 332nd Fighter Group. The interrogator had details about Romitelli Airfield, squadron commanders, and even information about Jefferson's parents' home in Detroit. Jefferson recalled, "He knew my father was a teacher and my mother's maiden name. Their intelligence was frighteningly comprehensive." Inside Stalag Luft 3, Jefferson found that he was treated like any other American officer. White prisoners of war from bomber crews shared the same fate. Many approached him with thanks for the protection provided by the Red Tails. These moments, rare in segregated America, happened naturally in German prison camps. Jefferson noticed the irony. Here he was in a Nazi prison camp, experiencing more equality from white Americans than he ever would back home. When the war finished and Jefferson returned to the United States, he faced immediate segregation at the disembarkation point. German pilots reportedly recognized the Red Tails' skill, giving them the nickname Schwarze Vogelmenschen. Meanwhile, American bomber crews became their strongest supporters. These men, who confronted death on every mission, cared little for race and focused solely on survival. Bomber crews created their own legends about the Red Tails. Tales circulated about their unique flying style, their wing-waggling greetings, their tight formations, and their refusal to abandon damaged bombers. The bomber crews affectionately called them Red Tail Angels. The statistics backed up the bomber crews' admiration. Research by Air Force historian Dr. Daniel Hullman showed that bombers under the protection of the 332nd Fighter Group lost only 27 aircraft to enemy fighters. This was compared to an average of 46 losses for other P-51 groups within the 15th Air Force. This remarkable protection rate occurred even though the Red Tails undertook some of the longest and most perilous missions of the war. By the end of the conflict, the Tuskegee Airmen had a combat record that shattered every pre-war belief about black military capability. They flew 1578 combat missions, completing over 15,000 individual sorties. They took part in 179 bomber escort missions and 311 missions for the 15th Air Force. In aerial combat, they destroyed 112 enemy aircraft. On the ground, they accounted for 150 enemy aircraft. They even shot down 3 Messerschmitt Me 262 jet fighters on March 24, 1945. Ground targets included 950 rail cars, trucks and motor vehicles, along with 254 locomotive engines. On June 25, 1944, they damaged the former Italian destroyer Giuseppe Missouri beyond repair. The protection record was impressive, record. With only 27 bombers lost to enemy fighters, compared to an average of 46 for other groups. Maintaining excellent protection across 179 escort missions, individual achievements were notable too. Lee Archer had 4 confirmed victories. Joseph Elbury also secured 4 victories, including 3 FW-19s on July 12, 1944. Edward Toppins achieved 4 victories. Clarence Leicester recorded 3 kills in a single mission on July 18, 1944. They earned a total of 96 distinguished decorations. The Flying Crosses awarded to the 332nd Fighter Group highlight their remarkable achievements. Pilots earned 744 Air Medals, 14 Bronze Stars, 8 Purple Hearts, and received 3 distinguished unit citations for the 99th Fighter Squadron, along with 1 for the 332nd Fighter Group. The human cost was significant, with 66 pilots killed in action and 32 captured as prisoners of war. Additionally, 84 pilots lost their lives in training and non-combat missions. The shift from being mocked to gaining respect was not merely due to bravery. It showcased the effectiveness of American training methods and the technological edge that the Red Tails operated with skill. At Tuskegee, pilots flew an impressive 300 hours, outstripping the 200 hours logged by white pilots. They practiced formation flying diligently, recognizing that discipline would provide them with an advantage in combat. The washout rate at Tuskegee was 60%, while it was 40% for white cadets. Only the top performers completed the program, forming what Colonel Noel Parrish described as a super-selected group. The journey through various aircraft types tells a compelling story. The 99th started with outdated P-40 Warhawks when they arrived in North Africa. These liquid-cooled Allison engine fighters fell short compared to German Bf-190s in numerous performance metrics. However, the Tuskegee pilots leveraged the P-40's superior turning capability and robust construction to compete effectively. When the P-51 Mustangs arrived in July 1944, the Red Tails became the equals of any fighter unit in the war. The North American P-51D Mustang represented the pinnacle of American industrial achievement. Its Packard-built Merlin engine allowed for a top speed of 437 miles per hour. With its 6.50 caliber machine guns, it could easily destroy enemy aircraft. Crucially, its range of over 1,600 miles with drop tanks enabled it to escort bombers across the Reich. Behind every pilot who shot down a German aircraft were numerous support personnel, including mechanics, armorers, and crew chiefs who ensured the Red Tails remained operational. Of the roughly 16,000 Tuskegee Airmen who served, fewer than 1,000 were pilots. The remainder were the unsung heroes whose efforts were vital for victory. Ground crews worked wonders with limited resources. Ramitelli Airfield in Italy was basic compared to other American bases. Spare parts were in short supply, and the 332nd was often at the end of the line for supplies. Nevertheless, their aircraft availability rate, the proportion of planes ready for combat, matched or exceeded that of white units. These ground crews also faced combat challenges. Raids on Ramitelli were infrequent but lethal. On March 24, 1944, a German bombing raid resulted in the deaths of several support personnel. The men continued their work despite the attack, moving aircraft away from burning fuel dumps. The strategic bombing campaign over Europe served as a proving ground for the Tuskegee Airmen. Each B-17 Flying Fortress cost $238,000 and carried 10 highly trained crew members. Losing just one bomber represented a significant setback for the entire war effort. This highlights why protecting bombers was more crucial than simply achieving aerial victories. Colonel Davis recognized this when he instructed his pilots to resist the urge to chase German fighters. "Anyone can shoot down a fighter if they abandon their post," he said. "It takes discipline to stay with the bombers when the enemy is fleeing." The tactics of the Red Tails evolved through experience. They created a three-layer defense system: close escort weaving directly above the bombers, medium escort ready to intercept incoming fighters, and high escort looking out for dive attacks. This system demanded precise coordination and unwavering discipline. The Tuskegee Airmen fought two battles simultaneously, one against fascism overseas and another against racism at home. Their combat record directly challenged both Nazi racial ideology and American segregation, proving that excellence in aerial combat surpassed racial categories. While the Tuskegee Airmen engaged German forces abroad, they also faced prejudice domestically. Their victories against the Luftwaffe made headlines in black newspapers, but were often downplayed or overlooked by the mainstream media. The Pittsburgh Courier's Double V campaign aimed for victory against fascism abroad and racism at home, using the Tuskegee Airmen as key examples. The contrast with German awareness was striking. By 1945, the Luftwaffe reportedly knew exactly who piloted the red-tailed Mustangs and referred to them as Schwarze Vogel. In contrast, many white Americans were unaware that black pilots existed. This ignorance was intentional. The War Department rarely promoted the successes of the Tuskegee Airmen. The victory in Europe brought uncertainty rather than celebration for the Tuskegee Airmen. While white units prepared for victory parades, the 332nd faced uncertainty about their future. The Army Air Forces planned to continue segregation, despite combat evidence proving its irrationality. For decades after World War II, the accomplishments of the Tuskegee Airmen remained obscured. The story of the Tuskegee Airmen largely went unnoticed in mainstream America. Individual pilots faced this challenge. Lee Archer, with his 4 victories, worked as an executive. He seldom discussed his military past. He often felt dismissed. "Nobody believed me anyway," he remarked. "A black fighter pilot must be lying." In 1948, President Harry Truman signed Executive Order 9981, which integrated the United States military. This decision was influenced by the combat performance of the Tuskegee Airmen. Benjamin Davis, who commanded the Red Tails over Berlin, became the United States Air Force's first black general in 1954. Recognition came slowly. In 2007, President George W. Bush honored the Tuskegee Airmen with the Congressional Gold Medal. Only 300 of the original pilots were alive to receive this honor. Many had waited more than 60 years for national acknowledgement. The shift from mockery to respect was not a myth. It was a documented reality. The numbers tell the story. They achieved 112 aerial victories against the Luftwaffe. They destroyed 3 Mi-262 jet fighters in a single mission. They took out 150 enemy aircraft on the ground. They lost 27 bombers compared to an average of 46 for other groups. They earned 96 Distinguished Flying Crosses among the 332nd Fighter Group pilots. The nickname Schwarze Vogel showed that prejudice fades when faced with undeniable skill. Each German fighter downed, every bomber secured, and each mission successfully completed built a strong case. A pilot's skin color had nothing to do with his flying or fighting ability. Roscoe Brown, who downed a German jet over Berlin, summed it up nicely. "We didn't just fight the Germans, we fought ignorance, prejudice, and hatred, and we won all 3 battles. The Tuskegee Airmen did not only win battles, they changed the course of history. They fought 3 wars at once and triumphed in all. They took on the Luftwaffe in combat, challenged Nazi racial beliefs through their performance, and ultimately helped dismantle American segregation with their undeniable excellence. Given the chance, the Tuskegee Airmen soared. They turned mockery into respect, prejudice into acceptance, and enemies into witnesses of their remarkable accomplishments.